So by using technology to support written expression, teachers aren't going to be not meeting their obligations.
No, not at all. And again, it gets back to what is it that I'm actually assessing? And when you look at, again, the definition of writing, it's talking about planning, composing and publishing text in a range of different formats. The achievement standards will identify exactly what the students need to do. The tasks, the assessment tasks will identify, does the student have to include spelling? Do they have to demonstrate their capacity to capitalise the beginning of sentences? So once we have an idea about what's required within the various tasks, it then helps us to identify what adjustments we can make and what tools we may be able to make. Within the curriculum, there is a relatively small proportion of the Australian curriculum that requires the student to demonstrate spelling as part of their assessment. And it's only in English and the languages learning areas. So that means that if spelling, for example, is not part of the formal assessment, then we could use word processors that maybe have a spell checker in there. We may be able to use tools that will automatically capitalise sentences for the student, because that's not necessarily what we're assessing in that particular task. So knowing what each task requires the student to be able to demonstrate helps us to identify what adjustments we can make and then what tools, including the technologies, that the student can actually use to be able to demonstrate their understanding. And it's vital that we keep that in mind, because there will be many students who have a much higher level of understanding and capability in writing than what is being reflected in their marks, not because they don't have that knowledge, but it's how we're requiring the students to actually respond that is the barrier to them being able to demonstrate their knowledge at the level of their real capabilities.
You can assess things like capitalisation without having students handwrite, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's still okay, isn't it?
Absolutely. For example, I could use the Windows Notepad as the tool that the student would be using to produce their first draft of a story. Now, in a first draft, I might want the student to demonstrate that they understand that they have to capitalise the beginning of a sentence, that they have to punctuate appropriately, that they need to demonstrate their spelling. Now, the Notepad doesn't have any spell checker in it. It doesn't automatically capitalise the beginning of a sentence or the names of places. So I could very easily use that Notepad tool as the tool that I'm using to produce my first draft, identify whether the student has demonstrated an understanding about capitalisation and punctuation and those things without requiring the students to handwrite. Because the handwriting component for many students can in fact compromise their capacity to demonstrate punctuation and capitalisation, because they're having to focus so much on producing the actual letters that they can't focus on those other things, which are in fact the things that we are wanting the student to demonstrate, not the handwriting component. So if we get back to what we were talking about before with regard to a Year 5 student, we're not formally assessing handwriting in Year 5, so we don't have to use that. But if I require the student to actually produce their first draft by handwriting, it could in fact compromise the student's capacity for their spelling and their capitalisation and punctuation and all of those things that I'm actually wanting to assess. And again, that's back to where it's important to know what is it that the student needs to do in that particular writing task. Does the student need to be able to demonstrate capitalisation? Does the student need to be able to demonstrate handwriting? And the things that the student does not have to demonstrate don't specifically need to be part of the requirements for a student in that particular task.